Hey folks, it's DIY Guy 123 here, coming at you with a real easy do-it-yourself job on this Craftsman snowblower. I'm going to replace the friction disc because it's worn a bit and the rear wheels don't turn when the snow gets really heavy in front of the machine and it kind of catches on some ice or something, that the wheels don't turn anymore. And so why is that? Well, you know that the drive wheels are controlled by a hand lever, right? So you press the hand lever down, and that pulls on another lever right here, and then that pulls on this spring, and it pulls on this lever, and it pulls on all these various things, and ultimately it pulls on this big aluminum disc that's spinning. It's a big disc here, and that disc is spinning around always because there's a pulley there, a belt there that goes up to a pulley on the engine. So that disc is always spinning, and what it does when you pull on that lever, it draws this disc towards the back of the machine so it will contact this rubber wheel right here. Oh, maybe you can see it better from the top. It's a rubber wheel, and I've got one, a new one. Where is that? And so I want to show you, it's called a friction disc or a friction wheel, and it's really just a rubber band sandwiched between two metal plates. Well, how do we get it out? So first thing you do, you turn it up like this. Now I turn, my gas tank is pretty low right now, not empty but almost, and I looked for a shutoff valve. Most blowers that have a shutoff valve, you can turn the shutoff valve closed and then put the gas cap on really tight, and then you can tip it right up in its front chute and it won't leak. And the oil probably won't leak out either. I wouldn't leave it that way overnight or anything, but while you're working on it, it's okay. This one I could not find a fuel shutoff, and when I tried this earlier and the gas tank was not full but half full, and I also didn't have a block underneath the front of it, it leaked gas. So the fact that the gas tank is low coupled with I've got a block under it, it's no longer leaking gas and I can work without any time pressure. So you have to take, in this machine, you have to take both wheels off and then pull the shaft in. Well, all snowblowers I've ever worked on are almost identical to this. There could be some little nuances, but basically this will tell you everything you need to know to change a friction disc in almost any blower. So these wheels are held on with a clip. So you unsnap the clip and pull it up. Now be careful. See where I've got my finger right there? If that clip closed, it would be causing the part in the center of the camera, the vertical part, it would be causing that to move counterclockwise towards my finger, and I could hurt my finger. So I'll just show you without having my finger in there what happens. Hopefully I don't end up giving a demonstration of what not to do and then doing it myself. This is frustrating. Okay, here we go. Now, and see how that snap back like that? If your finger was in there, they do really hurt even though they're small. So once you pull that clip out, your wheel should just slide off like that. Now, if you've never had the wheels off and your blower's really old and you didn't grease these shafts, your wheel may not come off that easy. And, well, good luck. You can heat it and pull on it and do all kinds of various things to get it off, but that's not what this video addresses. So I got the other side already off in preparation for the video. Now the shaft has a bearing on each end, and this blower has a keeper for that bearing, and it's held on, so there's the plate is held on by two bolts, and then the bearing is held onto the end of the shaft by this nut, and then of course the plate holds the bearing, holds the shaft. So to get this out, what you have to do is, so the first time I tried to take that shaft out, I took the nut off the end here and thinking I would slide the shaft that way. But what happens is there's a gear that's on that shaft that is permanently on the shaft, and you can't get the gear through this little business right here. So in fact, you have to bring the shaft the other way. So when in doubt, just take the nuts and the bearings off and just set them aside. Do that on both sides, and then it's easier for you to work. And I guess on this side you really only need to take the nut off. So you hold this, you need both your hands for this job. You hold the rubber disc so that the axle doesn't spin. And with an impact gun you can take that nut off. So now, with the nut off, this bearing comes off. It doesn't, actually I didn't even need to take that off. But anyway, it didn't hurt that it did come off. Now I'm sliding the shaft to the left, left, and now it's come out. Now the shaft is out, and with the shaft out, there we go. If you put it in, what speed it in? What's this? If you put it in reverse, then this comes out in your hand. Now it's important to remember the orientation. When you put this in reverse, then the friction disc will just come out. It fell out actually. It was held in place by these two little notches inside of this spot right here. So it's important to remember the orientation. This versus this. So it was not in like this. It was in like this. So the friction disc goes to the far right. Now we see there's 1, 2, 3 nuts and bolts there. So we're going to release those 1, 2, 3 nuts and bolts, replace this rubber disc, and then put it all back together. So I'll be back in a second when I do that. Okay, so here's my new friction band, and this is about 20 bucks at the store. 44620 is a number on it, but your part number may be different. One nice thing about this is I've done these before. You obviously need to have a wrench or a socket on here, preferably a socket on an impact driver like that to make it faster. But in the back, I've always had to hold a wrench in there so that that head of the bolt doesn't spin. But it's actually nice because it's got a casing that won't let the bolt spin. So it should be easy. There's one. 2. There's 3. Okay, so now we got this ready to go. Now if I pull that apart, hopefully that just comes off of there. You'll be able to see these are there. So I'll just be careful with that, put it down, not knock those bolts out. Now here, it may be difficult to see in the camera, my lighting, but they're actually 2 discs. There we go. And I was careful to move my fingers to the side. I initially had my hand like that when I was pulling, and I thought, hey, if that slips, I might go through my hand. So I actually pushed like this, so if it missed, I didn't go through my hand. So now you've got this disc, you've got the rubber thing, and you got this disc. If we compare the rubber doodad, this one doesn't look too bad, but I've seen them before where they, I don't know, they just don't seem to grip very well, and this one actually doesn't look bad at all. But I'm putting the new one on. I got it. I'm hoping it'll make a difference. So you just put it on the disc, put this guy back in here like you're making a sandwich, and then put it back up here and put your bolts through it. 1, 2, 3. Don't lose any of the bolts. Don't get things on backwards. Hold your mouth just the right way and they'll go in no problem. Start them by hand. Always start nuts and bolts by hand before you put any powered assisted devices on it. That is, unless you like stripping threads, which I do not. That's a great way to ruin your morning. These kind of, remember I said I like this collar on here that prevents the thing from turning? Well, kind of, it's good, but there we go, there we go, there we go. So I'll thread this guy a little bit, a couple turns, thread this guy a little bit, a couple turns. Now I'm not going to snug it all up right away, but I'll just kind of do a couple turns on each piece. Now, you do have to snug this up really tight. Yeah, you do. Make sure it's centered in there as well, like the rubber band is centered in there. And I also realize I'm using the non-impact socket with an impact device, so shame on me for that. Should also have safety glasses on when using an impact device, and I probably should have gloves on. Don't think I need a face mask, but there might be people that think that too. So I always tighten stuff by hand after using an impact wrench because I don't use it enough to really, like a pro would be familiar with, oh, when it makes that sound, it's certain torque and all that. Okay, so now we have the new friction disc on. I'll check that bearing, the shift bearing. Yeah, it's okay. rattles a little bit, but that's okay. So now, what you do is you slide it back in place. That's the easiest way to do it. Right, so I'll just show you here. So I've got the disc actually parallel with this aluminum piece right here. And that allows me to get it up in the groove and then rotate it 90 degrees. And now it's the way it should be. Next is this shaft, and I'll clean the grease off it. So now I'm just going to feed the shaft in this way. Go over the chain, because there's a chain that you got to go over. Go inside the little friction disc inside there. There's a gear, and I'm sliding the shaft all the way in. And when I get it all the way, then I have to set that gear underneath the chain. There, now I got all the inside mechanism done. I'm going to put the bearing back on. And I'll grease these bolts when they go back in, because everything should be lubricated when it goes back in. That's almost always true. I think there are some bolts that specify a torque with dry, clean threads. You're not supposed to lubricate them. I don't know. Anyway, everything I do gets lubricated on the way back. So then 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, whether I own it or somebody else owns it, it's going to come apart. And that is just the way we should behave. Guys that don't lubricate this stuff, putting it back together, I don't know. I wish you would. Okay. Next, tighten it up. Right on the shaft first. Remember what we talked about? Okay, so my battery died and I finished some assembly without recording it. So I put the wheels back on, I greased the shafts, put the wheels on, greased the pins, put the pins in, and so that puts the wheels back on. And then when it comes to this disc, you want to make sure this disc is completely clean. So take some degreaser or whatever you need to do to get that really clean. I've done it once. I'm going to take a clean rag and do it again, because it's very important that friction between the friction disc and that aluminum is very, very good. Now the only other, not tricky part, but part you have to think about is how to adjust, now that you've put a new friction disc on there, how do you adjust the engagement lever? So this is the engagement lever at the top here. When you pull on that lever, you can see that it pulls on this as well. And so there's probably and also there's a threaded part on the rod that you disconnect the rod up here by pulling this little pin out, and then you can take the rod off of the lever, and then you can spin the rod to make it longer or shorter. And of course you got to loosen that lock nut first and then tighten it when you're done. I've taken the whole thing apart and lubricated it because it was kind of seized up a bit. But now the question is, well, how far do you tighten it before you say that lever is the right length? And I'm sure that there's a spec that says you want to stretch that spring, you know, twice as long as it is when it's in relaxed state or something like that. I don't know what the spec is. I basically tighten it up, and if it slips, I tighten it some more. And so there you are. You've replaced the friction disc in about 15 minutes, and for, you know, not much money, maybe 14 bucks, you got your machine ready to go again for the season. Good luck with your do-it-yourself video, and if you like this video, subscribe and you'll find out all about the goings-on of my garage projects. See you later.